On a quiet summer afternoon in Beverly Hills, an unassuming guest once wandered into Barbara Eden's living room, searching for a restroom. But instead of finding a door to a powder room, they stumbled upon something far more disarming. A tall, glossy cabinet displaying dozens of handwritten notes and photos taped to the inside. Some were small postcards from her fans, carefully preserved, while others were heartfelt letters from close friends she'd met throughout her career. The unexpected visitor paused, marveling at how this comedic icon, famed for her turn as a mischievous Jeannie, had woven together her private memories in the one space rarely anyone else saw. In that moment, you sensed a hush, as if these letters were voices speaking from across decades, each pinned to the cabinet door like cherished confidences. It was a part of Barbara Eden's home that existed beyond the glitz and fame, a soulful gallery of gratitude and reflection. We know Barbara Eden as the effervescent star whose wink could light up a TV screen. But hidden behind her bright smile lies a personal universe shaped by a longing for intimacy and stability. Long before her name was printed in marquee lights, Barbara was a child who craved safe spaces and warm corners. She was born in 1931 in Tucson, Arizona, though life soon took her to San Francisco, where she lived with her mother, Alice. Times were hard, the Great Depression shadows lingered, and money was perpetually tight. Small apartments, shared living arrangements, and an endless stream of city sounds taught young Barbara that home needed to be a refuge, a place where the harshness of the world or the unpredictability of finances couldn't invade. This early lesson in cherishing comfort and protection would follow her through every real estate choice she'd make in the coming decades. In her late teens, drawn by the siren song of Hollywood, Barbara moved to Los Angeles. For a while, she inhabited the typical aspiring actress's digs, modest studio apartments with off-white walls and just enough closet space for her meager wardrobe. She had a small futon that doubled as both couch and bed, and a corner table where she drank her coffee every morning. Those early rentals bore only the faintest whiff of what her future homes would become. Yet even then, you could see her knack for making cramped rooms feel welcoming. Using thrift store finds and bright throw pillows, she transformed shabby corners into soft, cozy nooks that soothed her nerves after long days running from audition to audition. Friends recall stepping into her single-room studio for the first time and feeling an immediate sense of calm, a testament to how Barbara's personal touch could convert an impersonal space into something alive, personal, and warm. Maybe it was her future comedic flair sparking even in interior design, or maybe it was her innate desire to create a cocoon of warmth where she could flourish. But success arrived in the form of that magical show, I Dream of Jeannie, catapulting Barbara Eden into a global spotlight. Fandoms swelled around her pink-hued Jeannie costume, and tabloids loved discussing her personal life as much as her on-screen romances. She was wise enough to understand fame can be ephemeral, but it can also feel like a noisy parade, never quite letting you step off the float. So the moment she could afford it, Eden sought her first piece of real property, a neat single-family home in the Hollywood Hills. Picture the year, the late 1960s. She was already a household name, and Los Angeles was a vortex of parties, paparazzi, and neon nightlife. But if you made your way up a winding road in the hills, you'd eventually reach a pale yellow Mediterranean-style bungalow that felt oddly insulated from the chaos of Tinseltown. You'd notice the bougainvillea spilling over the stucco walls, and in the evenings, the soft golden glow from the living room windows. From the outside, it was pleasant but unremarkable. Step inside, though, and you'd discover the little details that made it Barbara's home. At the foyer, there was an ornate antique mirror she'd found in a tucked-away store on Melrose, She said it reminded her of time travel, an object with a history, something that had witnessed countless faces in another era. She liked to imagine it was once in a grand hotel lobby in the 1920s, Paris. "You can't know for sure," she would tell her guests, "but can't you just feel it whispering?" Past the foyer, there was a snug living area where she'd combined plush white rugs with teal accent chairs. It was reminiscent of her costume days, that swirl of color and whimsy, but toned down into an elegant grown-up interpretation. And in a corner, next to a tall bookshelf of scripts, were a series of black and white family photos. Her mother, her extended relatives, even pictures of Barbara as a bright-eyed teen in local pageants. These snapshots, she said, reminded her of her roots, ensuring she never strayed too far from her sense of self. Still, the real emotional heartbeat of that Hollywood Hills bungalow was the backyard. Though it wasn't large, the yard featured a carefully manicured lawn and a single tree that Barbara had vowed to protect the moment she'd moved in. Friends joked it was her Jeannie lamp in tree form, tall and slender, as if perched to greet the sunrise. Here, under its shade, Barbara would set a small table for tea. She had a fondness for early mornings, a habit formed in her youth when city noises kept her from sleeping in. She'd watch the horizon lighten, recall lines for upcoming scripts, and sometimes jot down her own quiet reflections about life and love in a journal. Visitors who were invited for morning tea would experience something akin to a spiritual calm. The older neighbors sometimes spied on this tranquil ritual and marveled that the vivacious blonde who seemed to be everywhere on TV led such a hushed daily practice at home. In truth, that was classic Barbara. The public star known for comedic snap, but behind the gates, a woman seeking gentle rest for her soul. As the years rolled on, Barbara's profile rose, and her wealth grew accordingly. By the mid-1970s, she yearned for a different environment. The Hollywood Hills were no longer the sanctuary they once were. The paparazzi had gotten bolder. Fans occasionally wandered onto her driveway, hoping to catch a glimpse of their beloved Jeannie. Barbara was gracious, never turning them away rudely, but the intrusions wore on her sense of safety. She decided it was time for a move. Enter Beverly Hills proper, a new property that became for a time her grand showpiece. This Beverly Hills home was an elegant Spanish Revival estate with a red-tiled roof, arched doorways, and meticulous landscaping. Built originally in the 1920s, it bore the hallmarks of old Hollywood glamour. Legends rumored that a silent film star once lived there and threw lavish soirees for all the local elite. By the time Barbara found the listing, the house had fallen slightly into disrepair, but she saw possibility in every dusty room and peeling paint patch. She famously quipped, "You rub a lamp and get a genie, give me a battered estate, and I see an absolute jewel." So she poured both heart and money into a top-to-bottom restoration. Her love for preserving historical details meant she kept the original wrought iron stair rails, the carved wooden doors, and the mosaic tile fountain in the courtyard. Yet she also wove her own aesthetic touches. In the living room, she introduced shimmering gold accents, not gaudy or overwhelming, but reminiscent of that playful glint in her comedic roles. The high beamed ceilings gave the space a cathedral-like sense of grandeur. She commissioned a specialty lighting system that replicated twilight, bathing the entire living area in a soft, pinkish purple glow each evening. Some who visited quipped it felt a bit like stepping into a genie bottle, but in the most luxurious sense. On nights when she threw dinner parties, the house glowed from within. Servers passed from the tiled foyer into the sweeping dining room, delivering delicacies to an intimate circle of her closest friends, other actors, musicians, and occasionally a writer or painter she admired. Although she was never a party girl by reputation, Barbara loved to gather small groups of people she cared about. She'd let them roam her library, which was lined with old Hollywood biographies and comedic scripts. She'd keep an upright piano in the corner where, if the mood struck, her musically inclined guests would plunk out a standard from the 1940s while the rest sang along. This was how she expressed her generosity, opening not just the door to her home, but the door to her personal joy. In that Beverly Hills estate, one corner of the second floor was entirely devoted to a walk-in closet that was said to rival the wardrobes of far more flamboyant stars. But for Barbara, it wasn't an ostentatious display. It was an intimate look into the roles she'd portrayed. Mannequins wearing iconic pieces from her past lined the edges, costumes from variety show appearances, gowns from red carpet events, and even a recreation of the original pink Jeannie harem outfit, gifted to her by a devoted fan who painstakingly restitched every detail by hand. Inside a glass case, she kept smaller mementos, a miniature prop bottle from the show's set, costume jewelry from a short-lived Vegas act, and pinned around these were notes to herself. Little "Remember this night with so-and-so, 1973" scribbles. So while it appeared to be a vast closet, it was more like a personal museum, curated by the star for herself, a place to wander through her own timeline. Yet, despite its refined beauty, the Beverly Hills house sometimes became a stage for personal heartache. The cost of stardom weighed on her private life. Barbara experienced marriages, divorces, and the joys and losses that come with forging relationships under perpetual scrutiny. Close friends recall that when she was going through an especially difficult period, she withdrew to a small reading nook on the upper balcony. The curtains there were heavy and crimson, the lights dim. A single armchair faced French doors opening onto a slender wrought iron terrace. She'd sit quietly, reading letters, or scribbling a line or two of her own thoughts, perhaps daydreaming of simpler times. The courtyard fountain's gentle trickling offered a soothing lullaby, reminding her that while storms of gossip might rage outside those walls, within them, she still had dominion over her peace. By the 1980s, Barbara's career had taken fresh turns, including stage musicals, guest appearances in new television series, and tours around the country. This hectic schedule left her longing for a getaway separate from Los Angeles altogether, a place she could retreat to that wasn't shadowed by the glimmer of Hollywood. Her choice was surprising to some, but felt natural to her, a desert escape in Palm Springs. While many stars indeed gravitated to Palm Springs, Barbara's particular property wasn't in the typical star-studded neighborhoods next to golf clubs and five-star resorts. Instead, she found a more private patch of land farther out, where the desert rolled toward the mountains, and the nights were eerily quiet, except for the whisper of wind across cacti. At first glance, this adobe-style retreat might seem a far cry from her Spanish Revival dream in Beverly Hills. But if the Beverly Hills house was all about classic elegance and old Hollywood, this Palm Springs abode was about introspection. Single story, built low to the ground, it mirrored the desert's flat expanse. Thick whitewashed walls kept the interior cool, even in the scorching sun. The roof was slightly terraced, letting the desert breezes slide over it. Huge windows in every main room unveiled sweeping desert panoramas, allowing Barbara to watch the morning sun paint the mountains dusty pink or the evening's purple dusk settle in with a final hush. Inside, she opted for an earthy palette, terracotta floors, warm beige walls, and bursts of turquoise and coral in pillows, tapestries, and paintings. It felt almost southwestern, reminiscent of her earliest childhood in Arizona. She wanted the space to be open and connected, so the living room flowed into the kitchen with minimal partition. The few times she invited close friends over, they'd gather around a big wooden dining table that Barbara had personally chosen from a local artisan. She liked to laugh that she'd been haggled into paying too much, but in truth, she adored supporting local craftspeople and fueling the creative energy of the desert community. There was also a hush in that Palm Springs retreat that many found spiritual. The star once joked that if she were to try meditating, she'd do it there, and perhaps she did. Late at night, under the vast starry sky, she'd stand on the back patio, feeling the raw desert wind, hearing the faint rustle of a cactus wren or the distant hum of a coyote. Some nights, the only artificial light in sight was the moon's glow bouncing off white sand. When she told friends about her time in Palm Springs, she didn't describe it as vacationing. She spoke of renewal, of clarity. She described it as a place that washed away the illusions that cling to you in big cities, letting you face your truest self with honesty and courage. At that same desert hideaway, rumors circulated of a hidden cellar. One old caretaker, who had worked there under the previous owner, claimed there was a trap door near the kitchen that opened to a dusty underfloor space. Some said it was used as a wine cellar, while others whispered it might have served as a safe room or storage during Prohibition. Did Barbara ever discover it? A friend once recalled a hush conversation in which Barbara giggled at the rumor, adding, "If there's a hidden cellar, maybe I should fill it with something wonderful, like old costumes from Jeannie. Imagine the next owner's surprise." Whether it truly existed or was just local lore, the notion of a secret space hidden in Barbara Eden's desert retreat only fueled the mythology that her properties were peppered with enchantment. Yet Eden wasn't content with just a city home and a desert escape. Over time, she flirted with the idea of a coastal haven, searching for a sense of wholeness by the sea. By the late 1980s, she found it, a modest but tastefully modern beach house in Malibu. While not as expansive as some of her neighbors' mega mansions, this property stood out for its refined minimalism. The facade was sleek, with large windows that faced the Pacific. Step out the back, and you were practically on the sand. The interior leaned toward bright, airy spaces, pale wooden floors, white walls, and an open-concept living room that blended into a state-of-the-art kitchen. In that Malibu home, the ocean was ever present. Barbara loved to start her mornings on the deck, letting the salt air fill her lungs. She'd sip her coffee and watch the waves roll in, sometimes with a script in hand, rehearsing lines in her head. Guests recalled that no matter how lively the conversation, if Barbara spotted dolphins dancing through the surf, she'd pause mid-sentence to point them out. "They're the ultimate free spirits," she'd say, "and who doesn't envy that?" Indeed, the ocean seemed to unburden her. It gave her a sense of playful freedom, reminiscent of her comedic roles, but also offered a kind of emotional release that she'd rarely felt elsewhere. Unlike the more intimate gatherings of the Beverly Hills house, Malibu was where she'd bring a small circle for weekends of sunshine and laughter. She'd serve fresh seafood, hand-picked from local markets. Lunch times would stretch late into the afternoon, with glasses of crisp white wine shared on the deck, while ocean breezes tousled everyone's hair. At night, if the mood was right, she'd light a few tiki torches around the patio and play old records, sometimes 1960s hits that reminded her of her breakout years, sometimes jazz classics that took her even further back. So often, it was in that simple beach house that she looked most at ease. She was no longer performing for the cameras. She was simply Barbara, content to watch the moonlit waves perched on a wicker chair with a light blanket around her shoulders. When friends asked her to compare her three main abodes, Beverly Hills, Palm Springs, and Malibu, she described them almost like facets of her own personality. Beverly Hills was her sense of Hollywood tradition and timeless glamour, the vantage from which she interacted with the film and television world. Palm Springs was her desire for solitude, reflection, and the unvarnished truth. And Malibu was pure joy, spontaneity, and the healing power of the sea. Each home allowed her a different form of expression, and collectively, they revealed the myriad layers of a woman who had grown from an aspiring actress into a television legend, bearing all the triumphs and bruises that journey entails. There was also a lighter rumor about the Malibu house, a Jeannie bottle bar. Word had it that in a small side room, Barbara arranged a decorative bar with shelves shaped like swirling glass bottles, an homage to her signature role. If you were lucky enough to get invited for a drink, you'd see the playful nod to her legacy. Tiny pastel-colored decanters lined the shelves, and while she wasn't a big drinker herself, she stocked top-shelf spirits for her guests. It was part whimsical reference and part comedic wink at her own history. One friend teased her, "So do you pop out of one of these bottles when we ring a bell?" Barbara flashed that mischievous smile. "No, but I can conjure a great cocktail if you need me to." Now and then, you'd hear about smaller properties, ones she briefly owned or leased for filming or touring. But these three main enclaves are the pillars of the Barbara Eden real estate legend. Each witnessed a different chapter of her life, reflecting her transformations in love, career, and identity. And for Eden, each new house was an evolution of her sense of self. She never believed in stale or one-size-fits-all design. Instead, she'd gather experiences like seashells and scatter them around her living space, shaping the colors and textures to mirror the changes in her heart. Underpinning all these choices was a profound desire to maintain a protected inner world. For a performer whose face was recognized across continents, having a haven or havens was non-negotiable. Indeed, her homes became her diaries. Rather than scribble each memory on paper, she wrote them in plaster, paint, fabric, and furnishings. In that sense, her closet in Beverly Hills, her deck in Malibu, and her desert patio in Palm Springs were chapters in the same story, an ongoing conversation between a star's public shimmer and the private soul yearning for grounding. Few people realize how many philanthropic events Barbara quietly hosted at her properties, especially in Beverly Hills. She had an affinity for children's charities. During one memorable holiday season, she filled the entire courtyard of her Spanish Revival estate with a winter wonderland, complete with artificial snow and a life-size Santa sleigh. Dozens of kids were invited, some from battered women's shelters, some from struggling families in the city. There was a rumor that she dressed up in a comedic holiday outfit, no genie costume this time, and handed out small gifts personally to each child. Those in attendance recalled that the real showstopper wasn't the decor, but the genuine warmth with which she welcomed each guest. The woman who brought so much laughter on screen managed to bring that same joy to children who needed it most. Though the show business spotlight has come and gone in waves, Barbara Eden's private realms remain a testament to a timeless pursuit, forging a sanctuary that honors the complexities of one's life. And maybe, in a sense, that's the real magic trick she accomplished, not blinking her eyes and nodding her head to make wishes come true, but carefully, patiently designing homes that allowed her to breathe, to reflect, and to feel truly at home in a world that tried to cast her as a perpetual fantasy. For all the jokes about genies and bottles, there's a deeper marvel here. A woman whose personal spaces, from Beverly Hills to Palm Springs to Malibu, became the perfect architecture of her soul. each house a page in a story of resilience, hope, and the quiet wonder of a life fully inhabited.